So there's another guy who does what I do. He's extremely well respected. He does extremely good work. I hate him. He's always been very nice to me when I've seen him professionally. I have an irrational hatred of him. And whenever his name comes up, it drives me nuts. Like people bring it, we hired him, and I was like, good. And because I hate him, I'm really competitive with him. And so I will go online and look at my book rankings, and I'll immediately check his. And mind you, I don't look at anybody else's, just his. And if I'm ahead, I've got this smug feeling. And if he's ahead, I get really pissed off, So anyway, we had the opportunity to speak at the same event. I don't mean me in the morning, him in the afternoon. We were interviewed together on the stage. And the interviewer thought it would be fun if we introduced each other. And so I went first. And then I looked at him and I said, you make me really insecure. All of your strengths are all of my weaknesses. And when your name comes up, it makes me really uncomfortable. And he looked at me and he said, funny, I feel the same about you. The reason I had such an irrational hatred of him had nothing to do with him. It had to do with me. He's my worthy rival. His strengths revealed to me my own weaknesses. And instead of confronting and taking a hard look at myself and evaluating those weaknesses and working on those weaknesses, it was much easier to take all of that negative energy and direct it towards him. In other words, to be competitive, to want to beat him, right? It was a very cathartic experience. We've since become very close friends, have worked together. I no longer check his book rankings. And because we share the same cause, we can actually work together. And so what I recognized was so often in business, we have these competitors, sometimes on our own teams, that we want to beat them. We've all had the experience where one of our colleagues got a promotion and we got upset, we got angry. We got angry at somebody else's success. Think about that for a second. Why couldn't we share in the joy, right? What is it about them that's being revealed in us? That's the problem, right? And so having worthy rivals, instead of competitors are other players we set out to beat. But the problem with that is there's no finish line. And so if we're obsessed with beating the other company, then at some point, sure, you're ahead in whatever metric you chose, until when, right? At what expense, at what cost? That's not sustainable. But rather, the other players inside our industry, outside our industry, on our own teams, we can choose our own worthy rivals. Their strengths reveal to us our weaknesses, and by having our weaknesses revealed to us, it means we have the opportunity to grow and improve. And the infinite game, at its core, is basically a game of constant improvement. And so our worthy rivals reveal to us our weaknesses and our opportunities to improve.
Need motivation?
Watch a top 10 with Believe Nation.
Hey, it's Carmichael, and I make these videos because you are probably the most ambitious person in your circle, but you know you're capable of more, and you get that push by surrounding yourself with the best. So today, let's learn from one of the best, Simon Sinek, and my take on his top 10 rules of success. Enjoy. Rule number 2, focus on making progress.
When you're trying to build trusting teams, you recognize that you cannot enforce certainty on people. You can offer goals. People like goals. But what's important is how we get there, not just that we got there. Right. Think of it like trying to lose weight, right? There's nothing wrong with setting arbitrary goals with arbitrary dates, which is, by the way, how we build our businesses. Right. We want to hit X amount of dollars in revenue by probably the end of the year because that's when we pay taxes. It's a completely arbitrary number. Somebody might say, we could do better than that. And you're like, you're right. And then we change the number, right? Complete works of fiction. So we're striving to hit a work of fiction, right? Yeah. And it's the same when we want to lose weight. I want to lose X amount of pounds by X date. Arbitrary, right? And we're doing all the things to do that. We're exercising, eating well, all the things. We love standing on the scale. We love a metric. There's nothing wrong with that. Human beings need that. We can't run in a marathon without mile markers. It's actually unnerving. We need to know how fast and how far, so the metrics are good. And let's say you hit your goal, right? You hit your performance goal just as you had articulated. Amazing, you feel incredible, you feel like you've succeeded. Here's the problem. You have to keep exercising for the rest of your life. Right? In other words, you don't stop doing the things that you were doing. So the game hasn't ended. It was simply a waypoint. But what I think is more interesting is what happens if you miss your goal? What happens if you don't lose the amount of weight that you wanted on that date? And the answer is nothing. nothing happens because you're probably way healthier than you are now than you were. You're probably easily you can see the trend data. You can see you're well on your way to hitting your goal. You just picked the wrong date. You're easily going to hit it in another month if you just stick to your regime. Business is the same, which is sometimes we miss our goals, but the question is what's the trend data? Is the team working well together? Is morale high? Is some of it out of our control? Market conditions and things like that, things we didn't know about. And so if we happen to miss the number, the problem is how are we rewarding our people? And so many of us only reward our people based on if they hit the number. But what if they're begging, borrowing, and stealing? What if they simply rush at the end of the quarter to drop their prices or have some sort of promotion or have some trickery? They'll hit the number. And then we bonus them, which tells everybody else, I don't care how you hit your numbers as long as you hit them. Well, guess what kind of behavior that's going to reinforce inside our organization? Whereas if you look at the data, the trend data, and you reward somebody who's well on the path, what we're telling you is as long as you're doing a good job, you'll do well in this organization. Leaders understand that they are not responsible for the results. They are responsible for the people who are responsible for the results. And that skill set is very, very different than just trying to get people to do the thing that you know how to do better than them because you've been doing it your whole life.
Rule number 3, be able to adjust.
When the pandemic struck, I mean, my book came out a few months before the pandemic. And so for someone like me who loves to observe and whether this stuff is true or not, you sort of go, you sort of wonder, is everything going to hold up or not? And as an existential flex is something that I predicted would happen either zero, once, or at the absolute most twice in a career. But when COVID happened, we all went through it at the same time. Existential flexibility is that you're able to make a profound 180-degree strategic shift in order to continue to advance your cause. In other words, stay relevant. This is not about the daily flexibility of business. We're talking profound strategic shift here. And sometimes brought on by pandemic, sometimes brought on by changing technology or politics or culture or tastes, but you're able to adjust. So for example, it's Apple, Steve Jobs, when they're developing technology in one direction, they discover this thing called the graphic user interface that they did not invent, and they decide to walk away from millions of dollars spent and countless man hours in order to focus on a different strategic position, because Jobs believed that was a better way to advance his cause of empowering individuals to use personal computers. That's existential flex.
Rule number 4, replace judgment with curiosity.
How do we replace our judgment with curiosity? So there's a simple technique. There are simple techniques to do this. One is write yourself a little reminder. Put a little sticky on your computer that says be curious or ask questions. You'll be amazed how well that works. But especially in times when we're judging, especially when we're in groups of leaders, we're in meetings, we can snowball into judgment really quickly. Let's say someone's performance is in decline. Immediately, they're lazy, they're stupid, they don't understand, they're a problem child. All it takes is one person to break that judgment and say, well, maybe they're going through something. And there is a technique where when you start to form a narrative about someone or about something, that you force yourself to come up with 21 possible alternatives of what could be going on in their life. So are they lazy? Absolutely. That's absolutely a possibility. Are they a problem child? Are they toxic? Absolutely. Are they are their kids struggling at school? Maybe. Do they have problems in their family? Maybe someone's sick? Maybe. Do they have medical issues that they're hiding from us, that they're too embarrassed about? Maybe. My point is can you go through the exercise of writing 20 or 21 alternative stories of what could be happening, and all of a sudden we find ourselves talking about and treating that person differently. And it doesn't just come about people, it's also about decisions we're making at work. And again, in a meeting, all it takes is one person to raise a question of what if. As leaders, the more we start asking each other and ourselves, what if, or what are the opportunities, or what are the possibilities, we'll find ourselves doing that with our people. That when they come to us, instead of us correcting them and telling them that they're wrong, raising questions. But believe it or not, simply having a little reminder to be curious is really important.
Also, to make sure you're actually taking action after watching this video, I've designed a special free worksheet just for this video. The worksheet will highlight all of the lessons learned in this video, as well as pull out our 3 favorite learnings and quotes that will inspire you to actually do something. The worksheet will also give you space to write down what your key takeaways are and your specific plan of action to make sure you're getting results. If you want the worksheet designed specifically for this video, absolutely for free, there's a link in the description below. Go click on it and start building the momentum in your life and your business. I'll see you there. Rule number 5, embrace uncertainties.
First and foremost, we have to understand that there's no such thing as certainty of outcome. And this is why this is a huge difference between finite mindsets and infinite mindsets, right? A finite-minded leader is afraid of surprises and does not like uncertainty, which is why they like to work in very short time frames, because you can actually affect quite a lot of certainty if you only think quarter to quarter, maybe year to year. But if you start thinking in 5 and 10 year increments, we all know we have zero control over those outcomes. So finite-minded players like to play with very short time frames because it makes them feel better, even though the game is infinite. So it's actually, again, sort of a stupid idea. Infinite-minded players embrace uncertainty and find opportunity in surprise. And so where something goes wrong or different, and just as an aside, I got such a kick out of when COVID struck, everybody was talking about during these uncertain times. Newsflash, all times are uncertain. There's never been a time in history ever that was certain. All that happened was something that we didn't expect took place that reminded us that time is uncertain. And for the finite-minded players, the immediate reaction was panic, right? What am I going to do? How am I going to survive? And try double down on the old way of doing things, hoping that if I just did it more, or at least attempt to do it online, that it would survive, right? The more infinite-minded players, and this has nothing to do with stress, we can still have high stress with what was going on, but the more infinite-minded players saw the sudden change in their business and thought, ooh, okay, this is an opportunity. What can I do with this? And instead of doubling down on the way they used to do things, but doing it online, they said, okay, the times have changed, the way I operate my business have changed, all the things that I used to be able to do, like having lunch with people, can't do anymore. So given what I know now, if I was starting from scratch, I have something really valuable and important, how would I build my business today to still provide the value to the people who are looking for the thing that I offer? And that was their mentality. Their mentality was very entrepreneurial. Their mentality was very creative. And though it may have caused stress, there was an appreciation for the opportunity.
Rule number 6, compete with yourself.
One of the nice things about the infinite game is 2 players or more who sell basically the same product for basically the same price for basically the same quality can all be wildly successful at the same time. Like, no one wins. And remember, we're deciding the metrics. So we could decide that it's market share or revenue or profit, and we're making these arbitrary comparisons to arbitrary other players, and we can be all high and mighty about ourselves. General Motors decided that market share was the thing, and they were obsessed with being number 1 in market share. Meanwhile, they were losing money hand over fist year after year after year. Not sure if that's a very infinite-minded focus, because you're clearly going to put yourself out of the game. Remember, when Circuit City went bankrupt, Best Buy didn't win anything. If anything, they had to change the way that they played because Amazon became a much more dominant force in the industry, and so they couldn't actually do the things that they used to do. And this is what it means to be an infinite player. It means you understand that it's not simply about repeating the same thing that's always worked, but it's adapting with politics and culture and technology. And it's not actually about competing against another player in the field, but the only true competitor in an infinite game is actually yourself. How do I make my product better this year than it was last year? How do I give better advice this year than I gave last year? How to become a better leader this year than I was last year? And it's a constant education of constant improvement. I can tell you a funny story, which you'll recognize from the book, which really captures the difference between a finite and infinite mindset, and it comes from a personal experience. I had the opportunity to speak at an education summit for Microsoft. And then a few months later, I was asked to speak at an education summit for Apple. Now, this was back in the Steve Ballmer days when Steve Ballmer ran Microsoft. And at the Microsoft summit, the vast majority of the executives spent the vast majority of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. Ballmer at the time was obsessed with beating Apple. At the Apple Summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One was obsessed with their mission, the other one was obsessed with beating their competition. Guess which one was struggling with issues of trust, cooperation, and innovation? So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. This was Microsoft's response to the iPod. And again, there's plenty of evidence and footage of Ballmer talking about he was going to beat the iPod and this was going to be the best product ever. And I have to say, this little piece of technology was quite good. It was very user-friendly. It worked very well. And it was a really nice little product. At the end of my Apple talk, I was sharing a taxi with a senior Apple executive, and I couldn't help myself. I just had to stir the pot. So I turned to him and I said, you know, Microsoft gave me their new Zune, and it is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he turned to me and he said, I have no doubt. And the conversation was over. Because an infinite player understands sometimes you have the better product, sometimes they have the better product. Sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. The goal is not to beat your competitor. The goal is to outdo yourself. Where Microsoft was obsessed with beating Apple, Apple ignored Microsoft and was obsessed with outdoing itself. A year later, Apple introduced the iPhone, which rendered both the iPod and the Zune completely obsolete.
Rule number 7, remain curious and listen.
Listening is a trust-building exercise, right? If you're in take it down to a personal relationship. If you've ever had a romantic relationship, it's a loved one, right? Making someone feel heard doesn't mean you're wrong. Saying sorry doesn't mean you're wrong. It just means you take accountability for your actions. And I think it is important that when somebody objects to vaccination, that we don't demonize or villainize them, but we attempt to hear them, make them feel heard. Doesn't mean we have to agree, but they have to feel heard. And, you know, listening is not hearing the words. It's making the other person feel that they were heard. We don't get to decide when hearing has happened, when listening has happened. They do. And by the way, it's not 100% successful either, because some people are just hell-bent on, but that's a minority. And so I think the exercise is sitting down with people and say, tell me what you're going through. Tell me what you're afraid of. I want to understand, because we're trying to make everyone safe. I want to hear what your thing is. And let them tell their story. We have no answers. We're not there to object. We're not there to react. We're not there to fix or tell them that they're wrong. Women are better than this than men. And I think that has to happen. And it can happen simultaneously. They are not mutually exclusive. I'll give you one example, which is I have a friend who refused to get vaccinated. And I sat down with her and I said, tell me your reasoning, right? She goes, well, this new technology, we don't know, it hasn't been out long enough. We don't know. So what I hear is fear of the unknown, okay? I go on, and I let her talk and say her thing and explain all the things, and I simply said, so you're afraid of the mRNA technology, right? Yes. I don't want them screwing with my DNA. I said, well, just so you know, it's 20-year-old technology, but then I found something I could agree with her. But you're right. It is the first time it's been commercialized. You're absolutely right. This is the first time we've put it in the market. So I affirmed her fear. And then I said, do you get flu shots every year? She goes, I do. I said, okay, Johnson & Johnson is a good old-fashioned flu shot. It's a different technology. It's not mRNA. So you're 100% right. If you're afraid of the new technology, don't get Moderna or Pfizer. But Johnson & Johnson it's just like a flu shot. It's the same old tech. And she went, it is? I went, it is. She went and got a Moderna shot. because she just wanted to be heard, because most of her friends, when she said, I'm not getting vaccinated, yelled at her, told her she was stupid, told her she's an idiot, told her she's letting her friends down, told her she's making other people sick, told her she's a risk to society. That doesn't make somebody's mind open up. All I did was let her feel heard. I think we have to do that.
Rule number 8, invest in human skills.
We don't have to like our jobs every day, but we do get to love our jobs every day. It's like you don't like your children every day, but you love your children every day. So having a hard day, that's fine. But the question is what do we fall in love with? And at the end of the day, the reason that we stay or leave a job is because of how we feel about that job. I think we misunderstand when we think people just leave for money. If they just leave for money, then they never really had strong feelings at the company in the first place, right? Because when people feel loyal to the company, they turn down jobs that offer them more money. Or if it's so tempting and the numbers are so high, then they go to their company and say, listen, I was offered this job. It's very tempting. There's a lot of pressure, but I don't want to leave. Is there anything you can do to help me stay? Right? So, there's the point is they're open about it. And what makes people want to have that conversation, like I said, is that they're seen and heard. The best companies have all kinds of programs inside the company to help the person grow as an individual. Now, we talked about, listening skills and these kinds of things. These are valuable for the work that we do, but it turns out that those skills also help us as parents. They help us as spouses or as boyfriends and as girlfriends. These are valuable skills in life, And I think that we forget that. We talk about hard skills and soft skills as if those things are opposite. I hate the term soft skills. Hard skills and human skills. And the more that we invest in human skills, in addition to the hard skills that we're teaching, the more people feel like they're growing as individuals. I'm a better version of myself now than I was when I started at this company, because the company is actually helping me in personal growth. WD-40, which is a company that I admire their culture, the lubricant company. They train their managers to be coaches. So literally, like executive coaching training, that kind of thing. But they train their own people to have that skill set so that they're equipped to help their people who have challenges. And especially with younger generation, the younger generation is asking companies to provide everything. We want to have our sense of belonging, our sense of community, our sense of personal growth, our sense of purpose to come from work. It didn't used to be like that 40 years ago. And so there's a huge pressure on companies. And so I think what entices people into the company and into the industry is not just come and do cybersecurity. There's a percentage of people who are, de facto interested in that, but rather tell them the kind of experience they're going to have, tell them what they get from the company, and you'll find it remarkable how many people will all of a sudden be interested in the category in the company because of what they get holistically, not just what they get from the product.
Rule number 9, be an interactive leader.
As a leader, our responsibility is to make the people feel that we have their backs and actually have their backs. So there's a sort of a nice anthropological, if you want me to go down this rabbit hole, there's a nice anthropological...
I find it fascinating.
There's a nice anthropological explanation, which I actually explained in that book, which raises the question, why do we have leaders? Human beings are naturally hierarchical. We self-organize all the time. It's got nothing to do with whether you have formal hierarchy, like in an organization. We're constantly self-organizing. Like in a sports team, who's the better player? We self-organize, and we pay deference to the one who is better. The scientist who publishes more, or the Nobel laureate. All the other scientists pay deference, right? This is not by accident. There's a very good anthropological reason for it. Going back many years, human beings have only been farming for the past 10 or 12,000 years, but we existed for tens of thousands of years on the planet before that, and we lived in populations that were about 150. We maxed out at about 150, which raises a very interesting question. They lived in austere times. People are hungry. Somebody, brings back some food to the tribe. We all rush in to eat. Well, if you're built like a football player, you can shove your way to the front of the line, right? But this is a bad system, because if you punch me in the face this afternoon, I'm probably not going to wake you and alert you to danger tonight. And so it's just a bad system for cooperation, which is if we leave every person to themselves. And so we evolved into these hierarchical animals. We're constantly assessing and judging who's higher in the pecking order, who's the alpha of the group. And when we assess that someone is alpha to us, we naturally step back. We naturally defer and allow our alphas to eat first. And we get fed later, and I don't get an elbow in the face, right? Good system. This has survived to this modern day. There's not a single person on the planet, absolutely zero, who has any moral anger, who is offended by the idea that somebody more senior in the organization makes a higher salary or gets a nicer office or a better parking space. It offends nobody. Now, we may think they're useless at their job, but the fact that they make more money than us because they're higher up in the organization offends zero. If you're senior and you leave your coat in the other room, someone will go get it for you. If you're junior and you left your coat in the other room, you get your own coat. In other words, you get treated differently. And this is why people want to get promoted, because they like the perks. But the perks don't come for free. And that's the point, which is as you make your way up the hierarchy, as you achieve that alpha status of the tribe, there's an expectation that, sure, we'll give you first choice of meat and we'll give you first choice of mate. But if danger threatens the tribe, you're going to be the one who runs head first towards that danger first to protect us, which means you might die first, right? That's why we gave you first choice of mate, because we want to keep your genes in the gene pool. We're not stupid. And it's when leaders shirk that responsibility that we start to have moral outrage. So for example, nobody has a problem with a CEO making more money than they do. The problem we have is when you're willing to lay off your people to protect your salary, to protect your bonus, rather than find other ways to protect the people. This is what morally offends us. We made a deal. There's a deep-seated anthropological deal that we've made with our alphas that you have to protect us. You have to, and you have to do what it takes. Sometimes putting your own interests second, and then you can. But if you're willing to do that, we're proud. We're happy. Go enjoy. You've earned it. And so I think this is a large part about building trust, which is it's not just about saying nice things and being trustworthy. It's that people feel that you actually have their backs and that you would be the one who take responsibility, take accountability, look for other ways to protect us if it meant we're going to get hurt.
And rule number 10, the last one before some very special bonus clips, is build connections.
One of the things we have to remember is that just because the business can function with a distributed workforce, with an online workforce, we know that there's a sacrifice. It's harder to build trust. If you've joined the company during COVID, you've never physically met any of your colleagues or coworkers. It's much harder to build trust when we don't meet each other. We take for granted that when we go to the office, that the little brief interactions we have at work, where you walk past somebody in the hall and say hello, or the talk going into the meeting and the talk coming out of the meeting, and bumping into somebody and go, oh, I meant to tell you something, or do you want to grab a coffee? No one of these things by themselves does anything, but over the course of time, they contribute to the building of trust, to the building of human relationships. In an online context, we don't have any of the in-between. All we have is the meeting. We log on, we log off. That's it. And so what a lot of companies haven't recognized is that building trust online is possible, but it actually requires more work. What used to happen just relatively organically now has to happen prescriptively. So for example, I'm a huge fan of the Monday morning huddle. We do one on our team, where on Monday morning, the whole team comes together, and there's no discussion of work or deadlines or workloads or anything. It's a human call where we simply say, what's on your heart and mind? And then we answer some funny or poignant question that's posed to us by the person who's leading the huddle that month. And we simply talk about ourselves. And you learn a lot about somebody. Somebody will say, oh, I had a great weekend with my kids and we went hiking. I didn't even know that they had kids, or somebody will say, to be honest, it was a really hard weekend. My father has cancer and he's in the hospital and he took a turn for the worst. And we start to see each other as human, and we start to empathize, and we start to create relationship, and we start to get to know each other. But it's done prescriptively. We make it happen. I'm also a huge fan of turning on a Zoom, for example, and just working. Like, we're not actually working with each other. We're just in each other's screens as we're getting our own work done. It's nice to have somebody there. I'm also, believe it or not, a huge fan of the telephone. Zooms are tiring, especially when you have them all day. It's fake. Very often, I'm looking at a dot at the top of my screen so that you'll think I'm making eye contact with you, but really I'm just staring at the dot at the top of my screen. Or if I'm staring at you, sometimes the placement of the camera and the screens, what you see is this, but I'm looking right at your eyes, And so I think a telephone, believe it or not, is actually a much better way to connect with somebody, especially when someone's distracted. When you can see that someone's doing email, while you're talking to them, there's no actual polite way to say, can you stop doing that and listen to me, please? And we just sort of do it. On a telephone, if you hear someone's distracted, you go, hello, you there? They go, oh, sorry. You can actually catch people. And I find that those interactions, I'm a pacer. I like to pace when I'm on the phone, when I'm thinking. I can't pace on Zoom, which means my thinking is junk, right? When I'm on a phone call, I can walk around. I can walk around wherever I go and I can talk to somebody and I can be much more engaged. I think especially for salespeople, use the phone. Pick up the phone. How are you? Wanted to check in with you. Have a conversation without Zoom. I actually think it's actually much better for building relationship, believe it or not. Having Zooms occasionally is great too, but I think we've forgotten how good the phone is.
There's a whole industry around, I think, work-life balance. Is that what it was? Yeah. It's like there's a massive industry that's just trying to teach this and help people with work-life balance.
Yeah, the problem
it seems like it's failing.
It's treating a symptom, isn't it? It's like so many things in our life. So here's the bad analogy. So we buy running sneakers, and they have really thick. You know this. Yeah. They have really thick heels, tons of padding in the heel, right? But that's because people don't know how to run, right? Because we land with our heel, which is bad for our joints. You're not supposed to have an extended knee. Yeah, all of it. You're supposed to be a toe planter, where your knees are always bent. I mean, you know all this. Yeah. So instead of teaching people how to run, what we do is we just build shoes with more padding in the heel and treat the symptom rather than the cause, right? And I think it's the same thing. We treat symptoms instead of the cause.
So
the work-life balance thing, what we're doing is instead of changing businesses, instead of changing the way a business operates and changing the way in which we teach leaders to operate with an infinite mindset, so that we more naturally have work-life balance. And let's be crystal clear what work-life balance means. Doing more yoga does not create work-life balance. Right?
That's the shoe.
That's the shoe. That's the cushion on the shoe, right?
Yeah.
The imbalance is I feel safe at home. I don't feel safe at work. That's the imbalance. Wow. And no amount of yoga or vacation time is gonna fix that. What fixes that work-life imbalance is better quality leadership in our businesses. And then what you'll find is the balance. But instead, what we do is we have an entire industry that's treating the symptom, that's putting cushion on the shoe to make us feel kinda for an hour that I've achieved balance. But it's just for an hour. And we literally market. Companies market themselves as helping provide you work-life balance. Unless you're teaching leaders to the people who are my bosses, then you are not helping me achieve work-life balance. You're helping me numb the pain. You're helping me cushion the blow. We come to work feeling uncomfortable that some of the decisions that are being made don't benefit the good of the employee, that it really benefits this artificial constituency that we call the shareholder, which is really just a bunch of institutional investors. There's this shareholder myth because there's been a steady decline of the middle class being involved in the stock market for years. And the whole point of the stock market was that we all get to share in the wealth that we helped build, because it's on the back of average Joe employees that produced the great wealth in the nation. And the whole point of the stock market, the genius of the modern day corporation, the genius of the public company, was that we all get to share in the wealth that we're helping produce. Unfortunately, over the course of the 80s and 90s, we've seen systems produced where we're seeing the general population, the middle class, actually be less included in that success. And the reason I wrote The Infinite Game was because I myself got tired of being told by people in positions of authority or people of extreme wealth that I was naive, that I don't understand how business works. And for many years, I believed them. I thought, maybe I am the dumb one, right? We all kind of feel that because they have the power, they have the authority, they have the money, they know more than we do, but we still go to work and feel uncomfortable. And it turns out that that discomfort, that gut feeling that says that there's something wrong here, turns out that the majority actually knows something. And to me, this is a world is flat moment, that the people who've learned to game the system, that this discomfort that we feel, we actually are right. Like, they actually don't understand the game they're in. Business is an infinite game, and when you play with a finite mindset, lots of people suffer, including the companies that they themselves are trying to build. That's the great irony. The great irony is the way you build great companies is with an infinite mindset. The way you build great companies is by prioritizing people before profit. The way you build great companies is will before resources. Both things important, but there has to be this general leaning where we can feel. When we come to work and feel like we're part of something bigger than ourselves, where we feel that our work and our effort is worth more than simply the money we make.
We are designed to take care of each other. As social animals, it is in our biology that we will take care of each other. This is why it feels so good when somebody does something really nice for us with no expectation of anything in return. We've all had the experience where somebody does something nice and you're like, oh my God, thank you. And then they put their hand out, you're like, oh, it kind of like ruins the whole experience,
Completely,
right?
absolutely.
It ruins it. But when they just do it and they're like, no. And you're like, please. And you're like, no, it's my pleasure.
Yes.
You know, not only does our esteem for them go up, but it feels good. Yeah. Likewise, it feels good when we do something for someone else with no expectation of anything in return. When we give our time and our energy. Money actually doesn't work, believe it or not. Like if I told you I gave $500 to charity this morning, you'd be like, okay.
That's great, Simon.
But if I told you that last weekend I gave up my Saturday and went to painted schools in the inner city, you'd be like, nice, that's really awesome. Yeah. Right? Now, the value of my labor was worth a lot less than $500. And that's the point, right? That's the point, which is we are designed to take care of each other. And there's a chemical called oxytocin, which is the chemical responsible for our feelings of love and friendship and trust. When you look at somebody you adore and you go like this, that's oxytocin. When somebody touches you and says, oh my God, it's so good to see you. Touch creates oxytocin. Yeah. So good to see you.
Yes.
You know, it actually makes us feel closer to each other.
Yes.
You know, when oxytocin is released in our bodies, not only does it make us feel good, not only does it boost our immune systems, but the more oxytocin we have in our bodies, it actually makes us more generous because the human body is trying to get us to look after each other. And it gets even better than that. The person who does the act of generosity, giving of time or energy without expectation of anything in return, they get a shot of oxytocin. The person on the receiving end gets a shot of oxytocin. And even witnessing an act of generosity or kindness releases oxytocin. It feels good to see somebody do something nice. And the more oxytocin we have in our bodies, as I said, means we're more likely to do something nice for somebody. This is the biology of pay it forwards. It's the human body's desperate attempt to get us to look after each other. And so when we create environments where we allow that to flow, it does naturally. It just takes care of itself. It's just biology. When we create environments where we restrict that, it actually does the opposite. It releases a chemical called cortisol, which is the feeling of stress and anxiety. Cortisol actually inhibits oxytocin, which means if we work in a poorly led organization, not only do we have high stress, but it actually inhibits empathy. In other words, I'm less likely to even want to care about somebody because of the poor leadership and the poor environment that's been provided for me to work in. Right? And the more cortisol we have in our bodies, stress goes up, anxiety goes up, it affects our immune systems. Happy people live longer. Happy people have lower rates of cancer, diabetes, and heart disease, which means when you're in a position of leadership, you're actually medically responsible for the lives of these people. Get the environment right, they will live longer, they will suffer lower cases of disease, and they will probably have happier families because of it. Whereas if you're a bad leader, over the course of time, you're actually killing the people working with you. Our jobs are actually killing us.
There are 5 practices in order to lead with an infinite mindset. You have to have a just cause. You have to have trusting teams. You have to have a worthy rival. You have to have a capacity for existential flexibility, and you have to have the courage to lead. So just cause. We have to give our people something to advance, a cause so just that they would be willing to sacrifice their interests in order to do so. In other words, turn down a better paying job, or frequent business trips, or working late hours. And though I may not like those things, I do them because it feels worth it, because I believe in what I'm a part of here, because I feel that I'm helping advance. Because there's no achieving in the infinite game. The goal is not final achievement. The goal is advancing, to progress in the infinite game. And to have that vision of an idealized state of the world that all men are created equal, right? It's an ideal that a nation is striving towards, that will never actually get there, but will die trying. That's the point. And we can offer people the same thing inside an organization. In fact, we have to give them something to advance. Now, how is this different from the why? A why comes from the past. It is an origin story. Every single one of us has our own unique why. It is our birthright. It comes from the sum total of how we were raised as kids. It is objective. You have one, and you have one for the rest of your life. The only one, right? And the rest of our lives are about making the decisions that help us keep in balance with our why. A just cause doesn't come from the past. A just cause is about the future. It's about where we're going, right? You can have multiple just causes. You can have one professionally, you can have one personally, you can have one for your family, you can have one for your church. And we're involved in all of these. There's massive pressure put on people, especially young people, to, what's your vision? Well, we're not all Steve Jobs and Bill Gates. We're not all visionaries. We don't have to have a vision, but we do have to find a vision, that we can find someone else's vision, and we are so compelled by it that we want to make it our own. That's what it means to go work for a company with a visionary leader, that we believe in that vision so clearly that we take their vision and we make it our own. And we will happily contribute our work, our effort, in order to advance what is now my vision. Right? Martin Luther King had a vision. He stood on the steps of the Lincoln Memorial and told us his vision, but his vision became our vision. So I may not have come up with that vision, but I found it, and I'd like to devote time and energy to help advance it, even beyond him.
We all carry a narrative. Someone's lazy. Someone's stupid. Someone doesn't care. Someone's only in it for themselves. These are narratives that we carry. And the problem is, when we evaluate their behavior through our narrative, it'll become self-reinforcing. We will see the things that reinforce our narrative. And the problem is then we'll treat them that way. If we've decided someone's lazy, we're going to treat them as lazy. So there's a great exercise to do, which is literally take out a piece of paper, and when we're struggling with someone, to think, what are the 20 other things that could be going on in their life? So yeah, number one, they're lazy. Possible. It's absolutely possible. Number two, they're having trouble in their marriage. Number three, their things have gone wrong and they don't know how to ask for help. Number four, they're still struggling with the trauma of COVID. Number five, their kids are flunking out of school. Like, all of a sudden, we realize there's a lot of other reasons that could explain their behavior, and we will then treat them accordingly. We will treat them with greater empathy. You know, instead of walking into someone's classroom and saying, what the hell, your performance is still down. I've had this conversation with you before. You got to get your performance up, or I don't know what's going to happen. Or you can walk into their classroom and say, your performance is down. We've had this conversation before. Are you okay? I'm worried about you. Mm-hmm. They have a problem, but they aren't necessarily the problem. And even if ultimately it does become that they're a bad fit for the culture, they are still not the problem. They still are just a bad fit for the culture. They have a problem. We can help them solve that problem by going to help them relocate to a different school district where they're going to be so much happier. We're going to be so much happier. Everybody gets to be so much happier. So the other story I was thinking of is the story of Alan Mulally. When he took over Ford, Ford was losing money hand over fist. In other words, performance was in decline. And when he sat down with his most senior executives and he asked for a report on how their divisions were going, regular green, every single one of them delivered PowerPoints with all green slides. And he said at the end of the meeting, how can everything be green if we're losing billions of dollars? And they just sat there. And he had another meeting. Same thing, all green. And he said the same thing. How can everything be green if we're losing billions of dollars? The problem was the previous leader, if you delivered a red slide, you got fired. And so there was no way that anybody was going to tell the truth because their job depended on it. And so one executive took the risk to turn one slide red. And Mulally said, thank you for the visibility. That's great transparency. Now, how can we all help him fix that problem? He has a problem. He is not the problem. All the other executives thought he was going to get fired. Turns out he wasn't. And slowly but surely, everybody, including leadership, could finally get a clear and transparent view of what was actually going on in their organization. And they worked together to solve the problems. If somebody was struggling, people said, how can we help you? Rather than, I'm fine, you're the one that's screwing everything up. So it's a great way to think about it. You have to be clear and open about what you stand for. And just like when you hire somebody, you want to make sure that when you hire them, that they share your values, that they believe in your vision. You know, they don't just think it's corny, you know, or marketing, but rather that they buy into it. And sometimes we'll make mistakes, and sometimes people will come and they fall in love with it after the fact. But we try on balance to bring people that we believe will get along with the people who work here because of our values and our cause. And so too is it with suppliers. I think that or clients, it's the same thing, which is we stand for what we stand for, and our goal is to attract people who believe what we believe. The more vocal we are about what we believe, those people literally will come to us or turn down a competitor who may even be cheaper because they would rather do business with us. And so it's okay to do business with a supplier that doesn't believe what we believe, but we have to go in with eyes open, knowing full well that this is just a transaction. You offer a decent product, you give me a decent price. This is not going to be a lifelong relationship. This is a transactional relationship. And when it's done, I'm just going to hold you to very different standards, right? Because when it's transactional, we're a little less patient when things go wrong. And sometimes we kid ourselves. You just can't do that too often. It's like if you're living a healthy lifestyle, you can have chocolate cake, just not too often. So yeah, I think the more vocal you are, the more you attract. And then you have to make decisions like you're hiring people because they're going to become a member of your family as well. This is the difference between the short-term finite-minded and the long-term infinite-minded. The finite-minded, is it the cheapest today? Is it the best relationship today? And pay no attention to the secondary or tertiary effects, and definitely pay no attention to what will happen in 5 years. Whereas that long-term minded, infinite-minded player looks at something and looks at someone and says, well, you know, you're not the cheapest, but I think we're going to get along just fine. And over the course of time, the quality of work will far outweigh whatever you paid. A friend of mine who's a consultant loves to joke about her clients that they never have the time or money to do it right the first time, but they always have the time and money to do it again. And I think when you're infinite-minded, you consider those factors from the beginning. We bandy these words around a little too quickly these days. They all kind of mean the same thing, you know, authenticity, intention, you know, purpose, flow, all these things, you know. Of course it matters. What is the birth of this motivation? Is it for PR? Is it to hire millennials because that's what they want, so we'll give it to them? You know, is it because the street demands it, or is it because it's something I fundamentally believe in? I'm very for what the round table announced. The statement's a bit pablum, but you know, it reads like the generic values they put on the wall of a generic company. I would have liked to have seen them, the people who they attribute the work to in the press release, to folks like Kip Tindall from Container Store or Jim Senegal from Costco, who've been leading this way for decades and have been outspoken about the way business has been done and been criticized for it for decades. Like, they're better messengers for it because they have that deep intention. They fundamentally believe business should be done this way. And the true infinite-minded player wants to build a business, not just to build a better business for themselves. They want to build a business because they want to build business better. So they don't just come up with an idea and then hoard it. They come up with an idea and share it because it's good for the game. It's about perpetuating the game. So if the intention is to see all ships rise, then I'm very open to what these companies are saying. If the intention is to see our ship rise, let's say there's one person who started their own little business, a little consultancy, right? Got my shingle out. I'm a consultant, right? And everywhere they go, they keep telling you that they're better than everyone else. They keep telling you they're smarter than everyone else. They keep telling you that, you know, the problem with the big companies is they don't have the flexibility. It actually gets to the point of being annoying, to the point that we don't want to actually work with them because we don't believe them, right? Because now let's change the scenario. You meet that same person, and they introduce themselves. Look, there's a lot of good consultants out there. Some of them are a lot better than me. But I wake up every single day to be a better version of what I do today than I did yesterday. And I can tell you that the advice I give today is even better than it was yesterday. And the advice I'm going to give tomorrow is even better. Because for me, it's an education. And that's why I love working with open-minded, wonderful clients who are partners, because what we end up doing is growing together. Right? Now, that's one person. Think about how appealing that person is. They've actually told you that you may actually get as good or better advice somewhere else. But it's who they are and who they're being and the disposition that they bring that makes them way more trustworthy and us wanting to work with them. And it's the same for big companies. It's got nothing to do with the size of the company, which is it's called humility and honesty. I remember young in my career, I experienced this myself when I went off and hung my shingle out, and I was I had a little marketing company, a little marketing consultancy. I remember going into meetings and the client would say, "We want you to do all of this for us." And I'd say, "I'm really good at that, pretty good at that, okay at that, really bad at that. I highly recommend you hire somebody else to do that. And I'm happily partner with them for them to do that." And the clients wanted to work with me more, not even though I just told them I can't do that, only because I was the only one who was honest. Everybody else they talked to, big or small, told them that they were great at everything, which is just not true. Nobody's great at everything. And so it's amazing. When you take the risk to be honest, it pays dividends in the trust that you build.
If I asked you, do you need to change? And you said to me, no, I'd be worried. Like you think you've figured everything out, like emotionally, professionally, all your relationships, everything's golden. Oh, okay, how's that working out for you? I think the answer is always yes, which is to view ourselves or our organizations as works in progress. That is an infinite mindset. Infinite mindset is fundamentally constant improvement. So, there's big change, there's little change, there's tweaks, there's dramatic change. Sometimes it's reacting to changing cultures, changes in culture, politics, technology. Sometimes the change is our own, sometimes we have to react to it. But I think the honest answer is yes, we have to change. There's always opportunity to improve something. So there's this notion in businesses that people fear change, which is just fundamentally not true. People fear sudden change, but incremental change is not threatening. People fear change that threatens them, right? And very often the way we change manage is we do lots of PowerPoint presentations about what's coming and don't worry, and we have all these things, and we treat it very rationally, and what we're ignoring is the emotional response. Now, there are some people who love change. It's an infinite-minded thing to embrace uncertainty, to see opportunity in surprise. For some people, especially people who have gotten good at doing something for 10 years, 20 years, that all of a sudden you say you're going to change it, they fear, again, there's that emotional word, they fear that they won't know how to, or it will set them back. And so no number of rational assurances will help them get over that. At some point, we have to just let them go through the process. Every decision we make in our lives as individuals or as organizations is a piece of communication. It's our way of saying something about who we are and what we believe. This is why authenticity matters. This is why you have to say and do the things you actually believe, because the things you say and do are symbols of who you are. And we look for those symbols so we can find people who believe what we believe. Our very survival depends on it. So if you're putting out false symbols, you will attract people to those symbols, but you won't be able to form trust with them. This is what Tiger Woods did to us. He lied. He lied. He told us what he thought we wanted to hear. And it was great, and we were drawn to it. And all of us who kind of liked that idea of the sort of the good guy, were drawn to it, until we found out it was a lie. He could have been the bad boy of golf. He could have had all the same endorsements and had a fantastic career and still been hailed as one of the great athletes of our day. But he didn't. He chose to lie. Good luck forming trust again, Tiger. We don't believe you. We don't trust you. The goal of putting something out there, if you say what you believe and you do what you believe, you will attract people who believe what you believe. If you go to one of your friends and you say to one of your friends, how would you like me to dress so that you'll like me better? How would you want me to address you? How do you want me to speak so that you'll like me more? Right? Your friends are going to look at you and be like, what are you talking about? You're like, come on. What should I wear so that you'll find me more appealing? And how would you like me to speak to you so that you'll like me more? And your friends are going to tell you, just be yourself. That's why I like you. Just be yourself. Now think about what we do in industry. What do? We do market research, and we go out and we ask the customers, what kind of things, what style should we speak to you? How should we decorate ourselves? What kind of things are you drawn to so that we can do those things so you'll like us more? It's just as ridiculous. It's just as ridiculous. Organizations should say and do the things they actually believe, and they will attract people who believe what they believe. Or they can choose to lie, and at the slightest hint that they might be lying, cynicism sets in. And people start saying, I'm not sure I can trust these guys because there's not a lot of consistency in all the things they say and do, which means they can't have a very strong belief set or they're lying to me. And we call them inauthentic. The entire process of asking other people who we should be is inauthentic. That's hilarious to me. All these positioning studies we do are inherent. We're going to do a study to find out from people so we can be more authentic. That's hilarious. Say and do what you actually believe, and the symbols you put out there, the things you say and the things you do, those red hats are ways that people can find you. What you have the ability to do as designers is create those symbols and allow people to use those things to say something about who they are. Work for companies, work for clients, work for people who you believe what they believe. Show up and feel a part of something bigger than yourself. And your part is to put what they believe into pictures and words and symbols and graphics so that other people can use those things to say something about who they are. People put Harley-Davidson logos on their body to say something about who they are. Corporate logo. Ain't no Procter & Gamble's tattooed on anybody's arm. Because Harley means something. They stand for something. People put that tattoo on there not to tell you that they own a motorcycle. They put that tattoo there to tell you something about themselves. You ever see anybody with a Mac laptop put a sticker over that beautiful shining apple? Ain't never gonna happen. Then how will you know who I am? Do you ever see anybody with a PC break out the Windex to clean out their computer? Mac people? Have you ever seen a dirty Mac? Doesn't exist. Does not exist. Why? Because it's who I am. These are symbols we use. The companies that are crystal clear in what they believe, and they're disciplined in how they do it, and they're consistent in what they do, and everything they say and everything they do serves as a symbol of the set of values and beliefs. We use those symbols to say something about who we are. We surround ourselves with the people and the products and the brands that say something about who we are. And when we can find the people who believe what we believe, we're weirdly drawn to them because our very survival depends on it. We need it. And so the more you can give of yourself, the more you can give of what you believe, the more you can with discipline, say and do the things you actually believe, strange things start to happen.
When are you at your best?
I'm at my best when I'm around people who believe what I believe. I know it seems silly, but I try very, very hard to sort of stack the deck, to put myself in a position of strength. So for example, somebody asked me just yesterday, have you ever had sort of a bad engagement? And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, not really, but it's not because I'm some sort of genius or anything like that. It's because I stack the deck. It's because I want to be there. I want to be around people who want me there. In other words, if I'm somebody's 10th choice, and I'll probably turn it down. Whereas if I'm their first choice, they really want me there, and so I'm more likely to have a good engagement. They're supportive of me, I'm supportive of them, and so I'm at my best when I stack the deck, when I choose to be in an environment where my strengths are there.
About 70% of their presentations talking about how to beat Apple. At the Apple Education Summit, 100% of the executives spent 100% of their presentations talking about how to help teachers teach and how to help students learn. One is playing this way, and one is playing that way. One is playing finite, and the other one is playing infinite. Guess which one gets frustrated? So at the end of my talk at Microsoft, they gave me a gift. They gave me the new Zune when it was a thing. And let me tell you, this thing was spectacular. It was the most elegant piece of technology I'd ever used. The user interface was incredible. The design was spectacular. I absolutely loved it. It was easy to use, and it was bright and gorgeous and fantastic. It didn't work on iTunes, which is a different problem, so I couldn't use it, but it was amazing. And elegant. My God, it was elegant. So I'm sitting in the back of a taxi with a very senior Apple executive, sort of employee number 12 kind of guy. And, you know, I like to stir pots. So I turned to him, I said, you know, Microsoft gave me their new Zune. And it is so much better than your iPod Touch. And he turned to me and he said, I have no doubt. Conversation over. Because the infinite player understands sometimes you're ahead and sometimes you're behind. Sometimes your product is better and sometimes it's worse. The goal isn't to be the best every day. The goal isn't to outdo your competition every day. That's a finite construction. If I had said to Microsoft, I've got the new iPod Touch and it's so much better than your Zune, they would have said, can we see it? What does it do? React, 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 react. Finite players play to beat the people around them. Infinite players play to be better than themselves. To wake up every single day and say, how can we make our company a better version of itself today than it was yesterday? How can we create a product this week that's better than the product we created last week? We also have to play the infinite game. It's not about being ranked number one. It's not about having more followers on Twitter than your friends. It's not about outdoing anyone. It's about how to outdo yourself. It's not about selling more books or getting more TED views than somebody else. It's about how to make sure that the work that you're producing is better than the work you produced before. You are your competition. And that is what ensures you stay in the game the longest. And that is what ensures you find joy. Because the joy comes not from comparison, but from advancement.
Nelson Mandela is a particularly special case study in the leadership world because he is universally regarded as a great leader. You can take other personalities, and depending on the nation you go to, we have different opinions about other personalities. But Nelson Mandela, across the world, is universally regarded as a great leader. He was actually the son of a tribal chief. And he was asked one day, how did you learn to be a great leader? And he responded that he would go with his father to tribal meetings. And he remembers two things when his father would meet with other elders. One, they would always sit in a circle. And two, his father was always the last to speak. You will be told your whole life that you need to learn to listen. I would say that you need to learn to be the last to speak. I see it in boardrooms every day of the week. Even people who consider themselves good leaders, who may actually be decent leaders, will walk into a room and say, here's the problem, here's what I think, but I'm interested in your opinion, let's go around the room. It's too late. The skill to hold your opinions to yourself until everyone has spoken does two things. One, it gives everybody else the feeling that they have been heard. It gives everyone else the ability to feel that they have contributed. And two, you get the benefit of hearing what everybody else has to think before you render your opinion. The skill is really to keep your opinions to yourself. If you agree with somebody, don't nod yes. If you disagree with somebody, don't nod no. Simply sit there, take it all in, and the only thing you're allowed to do is ask questions so that you can understand what they mean and why they have the opinion that they have. You must understand from where they are speaking, why they have the opinion they have, not just what they are saying. And at the end, you will get your turn. It sounds easy, it's not. Practice being the last to speak. That's what Nelson Mandela did.
This is the practice of empathy, that if we're struggling to communicate to someone, if we're struggling to help someone be at their natural best, I'm tired of people saying to me, how do I get the best out of my people? Really, that's what you want? They're like a towel, you just wring them. How can I get the most out of them?
No, how do I help my people be at their natural best? Right? We're not asking these questions. We are not practicing empathy. We have to start by practicing empathy and relate to what they may be going through. And it will profoundly change the decisions we make. It will profoundly change the way we see the world.
Working at a hard job, working for a bad boss, can sometimes be one of the greatest educations ever. So the question is, can you change your mindset? Instead of waking up in the morning going, oh, I can't do this again, but rather view it as university. You're getting a master's degree in leadership, and you may be learning everything how not to do things. And to wake up in the morning and be like, what am I going to learn today? Early on in my career, I had a really bad boss who believed that she could get the most out of us by berating us. And she told me once that I had one of my reviews, and she said, "You have no talent." And I was like, "Nothing?" And she was like, "Nothing." This was her way of, I guess, motivating me. But I had such a good attitude about it for a couple of reasons. One, because I knew what I was up against every day, and instead of taking it personally, I viewed it as my education of how not to lead. And I literally would file this stuff all away and use it someday. I get to use it now. And also, misery loves company. I had a fantastic relationship with my team. We looked after each other because we all had this oppressive boss. We would compare the advice that we got in our little career building sessions, and we took care of each other. And so we had a responsibility to each other, and that's where we cut our teeth on being leaders. And it actually made the job wonderful. Yes, there were days that were oppressive. Yes, there were days that I hated. Yes, there are days I wanted to pull my hair out and just quit. But it's because of the team that I had, and we looked after each other, and the mindset of learning every day that I made the most of it. So I think mindset is a huge part of actually getting some joy out of a difficult job.
There are two currencies in the infinite game: will and resources. Resources is money. You need money to stay in the game, but you need the will of the people as well. And the problem is that when we organize to win, that means the score is more important than the inspiration or motivation that people have to give their blood, sweat, and tears. And when we prioritize resources before will, that's a problem. I've never met a CEO that doesn't believe their people are important. The problem is where on the priority list. You've been to any number of presentations where they put their priorities on the wall. Number 1, growth. Number 2, shareholder value. Number 3, our customer. Number 4, our employees. There it is. See, I do care about our people. And the reality is, as social animals, we want to work for and we're willing to give our blood, sweat, and tears to leaders who understand that the balance of those two essential currencies, the balance of those two things is will has to come before resources. And that doesn't mean 90-10. When I talk about putting people before profit, people freak out, which is ridiculous. You need fuel for the car to go. Money is fuel for the organization, of course. Even if there's a leaning, if it's 51-49, there has to be a slight leaning towards people, because there will always be decisions that a company has to make in which those two cannot both be supplied, and one will have to be sacrificed. The question is, which will you always prioritize? Let me give you a hypothetical example to make my point. 2 CEOs. The first CEO says, our number 1 priority is growth. And of course our people are important, because if we take care of our people, we will meet and exceed our financial goals. Second CEO says, our number 1 priority is our people. And if we take care of our people, we will always meet and exceed our financial goals. Which one would you rather work for?
I don't want to prioritize.
I mean, it's obvious, right? It's obvious. So this is what it means to prioritize will over resources. It has, of course, money matters, but the people matter more. We make time for the things that matter to us.
Yeah.
And of course I have regrets, but regrets is not, I wouldn't use the word regret. Of course there are things that I missed. But I made a choice, and I'm very happy with that choice, and I stand by that choice, because not only have I had the opportunity, the amazing experience to spread this message and see it actually grow and be bigger than me, but I've had the opportunity to live an absolutely surreal life because of it. My life profoundly changed course, and I can't. It's not fair to compare those things. Yeah. They're not equals. Yeah. Everybody with straight hair wants curly hair, and everybody with curly wants straight hair.
Brunette wants to be blonde.
Yeah. I mean, I know people who have
the stability and the home life and the families, and look at my life and be like, oh my God, I wish I had that. And you look at my life and I'm bouncing all around, and I mean, the answer is I'm really grateful for the life that I live. Yeah. So no, regret is not the word that I would use.
But there was a price and a cost.
But there's a price and a cost that I took willingly.
The thinking of Milton Friedman, the 1970s economist, has really dominated sort of business theory today. He theorized that the responsibility of business, this is his definition, the responsibility of business is to maximize profit within the bounds of the law, right? What about ethics? You know, like a pharmaceutical company that raises the price on essential drug 200%, 300%, 500%, 800%, it's not illegal. It is unethical, right? It makes us uncomfortable, and yet the law is not broken. That's not a good enough standard to run a business. And it was his thinking that gave rise to the theory of shareholder supremacy, which was a theory proposed in the late 1970s, where we prioritize the wants, needs, and desires of a shareholder over the needs of the customer or the employee, which is like a coach who's trying to build a great team by doing what the fans want versus what the players need, right? That's basically shareholder supremacy. And as I said, it was just a theory proposed in the late 1970s that was popularized during the boom years of the 80s and 90s. Mass layoffs, where we use the livelihoods of human beings to meet arbitrary projections on an annualized basis at the end of the year, did not exist as a standard business practice prior to the 1980s. Did not exist. It was popularized during the 80s and 90s. The dismantling of Glass-Steagall, which was an act passed after the Great Depression to prevent another Great Depression from happening, and by the way, was extremely effective. Between the dismantling of the Glass-Steagall in the 80s and 90s and the Great Depression, there were a total of 0 stock market crashes. Since the dismantling, all in the name of corporate profit, we've had 3. We had the dot-com boom, Black Monday in 2008. In other words, when we play simply with a finite mindset, we actually do long-term damage to our own system that's supposed to benefit all of us. And I find that upsetting. We've seen the rise of Friedman's thinking, rather. And like I said, his theories dominate business today. And we feel it. Not only have we had those stock market crashes, but anybody who goes to work today, there's a general feeling of unease, especially if you work for a company that embraces annual or even quarterly layoffs to meet arbitrary projections. Keep in mind, a lot of the companies that employ mass layoffs are profitable, just not as profitable as they would like. It's not like they're losing money and they had to do this to save the sinking ship. That's something completely different. These are highly profitable companies that missed a projection, and so they laid people off so they could meet that projection. There's something fundamentally wrong with that. And we know it because we feel it at work. We see this decline of trust. We are not loyal to our companies anymore. Why would we be? They're not loyal to us. And leaders set the tone. So when companies are loyal to us, we will give loyalty back to them. When they're not loyal to us, why would we be loyal to them? I'm tired of CEOs telling me that millennials these days don't stick around very long. Well, why would they if you don't offer them any kind of loyalty back? And it's not for the people to prove to you that they're loyal, it's the other way around.
Because you made it this far in a video, I want to celebrate you. Most people start and don't finish. Most people never actually follow through. Most people say they want something, but they don't ever do the work to actually get it. But you are different. You are special. Believe Nation, you made it here all the way to the end, and I love you. So as a special celebration, if you put a hashtag believe down in the comments below on this video, I will showcase you and celebrate you somewhere on the screen in a future video because you are awesome. For 10 more amazing rules from Robin Sharma, check the video right there next to me. I think you'll love it. Continue to believe, and I'll see you there.
I believe you're happiest not when you're watching TV. You're not happiest when you're playing with your apps. You're not happiest when you're looking for likes. You're not happiest when you're fooling around.